Alright, week 10. This takes us into the last pair of lectures in this course, the last pair of workshops. And these workshops go together, and this week is the dystopia workshop that looks at what's really gone wrong with IP law. And that sets the stage for those questions about, well, how do we fix it? How do we fix things going forward? If IP law is the creature of law, we've created it, we've designed it, we've taken a concept such as property to solve a problem. It hasn't worked in some ways, in others it has. How do we fix things going forward? But week 10 is the easiest week. It's the what's wrong. And that's probably easier to see. And the two, I guess, big themes here are IP trolls and enclosures. So IP trolls are people who are bottom feeders, parasites, who exist around the legal system only to try and make money and exploit the system, particularly to exploit the costliness of the system and some of the weaknesses of the system overall. These are the equivalent of the people in torts law who fall over in school playgrounds and then sue the schools and the city councils and the government and so on, and end up having playgrounds closed down because they're people go around and litigate so freely. And in fact, it's a little more complicated than that. They don't even litigate, they claim on insurance. And insurance pays up reasonably easily on these things because they know they can always bump up the premiums. So a few years ago we had that terrible situation in New South Wales where a lot of parks and playgrounds were being closed down because council said we can't afford the insurance on them anymore. So those kind of bottom feeders, parasites, whatever you want to call them, exist in the world of IP law as well. And they're people, firms, for instance, who buy up rights, who try to find samples that people may have used or they can claim to have used in music to sue them on. They're people who claim to have written treatments for movies when movies come out, knowing that it'll probably be cheaper for a studio to pay them out a settlement than necessarily to prolong the release of a movie and to pay legal fees. So there is a very seedy underbelly to IP law. And some of these individuals get very, very rich. So we're going to look at the problem this week. Now, every area of IP law has an anti-trolling process. There's procedures for vexatious claims, and there's also vexatious litigation remedies in most jurisdictions, just generally for vexatious litigation. But of course, these things are quite difficult to prove. And of course, the worst of the trolls are those who sort of swoop in behind the banner of IP rights, creating the free market, creating fair compensation for people's work, and they just kind of slide in behind and say, yeah, us too, while we're at it. And well, we aren't actually creators, but we've bought up the rights from creators, so we're supporting creators by buying up all these rights. And the Men at Work case is one of the more tragic and unfortunate and very public of situations of IP trolling that certainly has made the music industry certainly take notice. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is in terms of enclosure, in terms of building closed networks. And the most successful early example of this, I guess, is the Kindle, which has been very successful at eliminating the second-hand book trade. It hasn't eliminated, obviously, it's still out there, but it's certainly put a dent in the second-hand book trade. Because while the Kindle is extremely convenient and an extremely effective form of buying and publishing, the problem is you're locked into a network where your IP, your rights as a consumer, are locked down to what you can do within the digital rights management. And in fact, under the digital millennium, the digital agenda laws, trying to break the copy protection on things you've actually bought from Kindle is actually an offence. I don't know if anyone's ever been prosecuted for it, but it's actually a situation where we've criminalised taking a book that you've bought and then breaking the encryption on it so you can give it to someone else. Whereas if you buy a physical book, there's nothing stopping you giving it to someone else. So I don't think I wouldn't put Kindle and Amazon in the same category as trolls generally, but the debates around digital rights management have been part of that big debate. It's a very interesting debate going on in terms of video games, in terms of download content, particularly download content that may actually be on the disc when you buy a game, but you purchase a DLC code to unlock. And a lot of people have said this is anti-consumer behaviour. It's reprehensible, so on and so forth. But the video games industry is in dire straits. It makes a lot of money, but its market is shrinking significantly. A big part of it is second-hand sales. People are buying second-hand games rather than buying new copies. And of course, when EB Games or JB Hi-Fi sell a new copy, a small percentage, maybe 10% of to 20% of the fee, the amount that you pay, will go to the development studio that created the game. If you buy a second-hand copy, none of that goes to the developers. So developers have responded by creating a whole lot of download content that you can only buy within the system. You can only buy once you're part of the PlayStation or Xbox network. And you can't sell that second-hand. You can't pass that on. So it's a situation that's fascinating. As our media becomes more and more digital, there becomes more and more questions of what is something you buy. I don't know if anyone would argue that they should be able to resell things they watch on Netflix. I watch on Netflix, I want to give it to my neighbour. I should be able to just give it to them because I've bought it. However, on the other hand, if you bought a DVD of the same movie and you wanted to give it to your neighbour and the studio said, no, that's illegal and we want the police to come around and punish you for trying to give that physical thing to someone else, it would be a different situation. So the complexity of the technology, the complexity of our media publishing system has painted us into a corner in many ways. And this is also where, and I know I've harped on again and again in this course, but the fact that the metaphor of property is not necessarily the best one to control the behaviours that we're talking about. Anyway, not all doom and gloom. This week we're going to look at the critical material, we're going to look at what's going wrong. Next week we're going to look at what might be going right and how we might fix the situation.